This computer. Cool, so we are now recording, so I shall hand over to Gabby.
Thanks, Chris. So as we've kind of already touched upon now, it is really great to see so many attendees tonight, and it's always lovely to see new faces as well. So there's a few different places you can find us online. I know Chris would be appreciated. Sorry to get you to mute if you're, sorry, just so we've not got too much background. Fabulous. So I'm just going to quickly run through the code of conduct that we've pulled together. So essentially what we're aiming to achieve here with this community is a safe space. It will always be a free event. Everyone is welcome, whether you're experienced or brand new to the industry or not even in the industry yet. But we do ask that you are respectful to everyone on the event. And if you feel that someone is not speaking to you with respect or something's happened that you're not too happy about, please do report it to Chris. Obviously, Tracy's not here this evening, or you can report it to myself or Ken, and we'll obviously make sure that that individual isn't, welcome back to future events. So we just like to make sure everyone knows we've got that in place. We've got a really great event tonight. We're going to have Chris having a chat with you about lots of different software testing job titles and what they mean. It can be very confusing when there's, seemingly the same role advertised under different names. So Chris is going to help you get your heads around that a little bit more. And then we have got a guest speaker tonight, Fiona, who is a QA manager, and she's going to be talking us through her career background, her journey into testing, and obviously, hopefully giving us lots of pearls of wisdom that we can take away. So yeah, it should be a really great evening. A little bit of housekeeping. If you can put yourself on mute and even maybe turn your video off while the speakers are on, it just helps things run a little bit more smoothly. And if we can get any questions into the chat box, and then we'll round those questions up at the end of each talk. Thanks. I'll hand over to you, Chris.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gabby. So as Gabby mentioned, I'm going to be going over a few sort of tester roles, but they're going to be very basic ones, just to kind of give you a general idea of what they are and what they do. So I will start off with probably the most basic of them all. Sounds a bit disrespectful, but it's not. It's how it all kind of started, was a manual tester. So what does a manual tester do? So it would be their job to read and understand the software, project, documentation, and guides. So obviously knowing about the product itself is always a good help. Reviewing and baselining the test cases. This would be with a product owner, a developer, or even clients where applicable. So to review them like in a demo. And then this would be then to execute the test cases themselves. So once the demo has been done, we then hand over to the tester for them to run through the test cases to make sure that there were no bugs or failures. And also to use the correct tools to test with. So any good manual test tools you can have, and this could be using to check that our lines in place, that the correct text is there, anything like that. Manual test is more of a visual thing. And then also is then to report any bugs that they found. This can be then handed straight to the developer or submitted to the team, but mostly done and put into a backlog under like a Jira board or a Linkit board. But then once the bugs have been fixed, it's then for the tester to then re-execute the failed tests to verify that they pass. And that's pretty much it. And then a automation tester. Now this is someone who would then convert all the manual test cases into automation scripts. Then it would be also their job to actually then select the best automation tool to use. This could be within Selenium WebDriver, Selenium IDE, or even Cypress. So the test would be written and they simply press a play button and to save the tasks, as we can see there in the little GIF, if they pass or fail. Similar to a manual tester, any reports of failures would then be handed back into a bug ticket or reported, and then the tests rerun after to verify that they do work. Automation tester will also then maintain their test scripts to make sure that they're up to date, so that there are any code changes, especially on the front end where the test will fail, to rewrite those tests. This includes back-end testing and also white box testing. And a bit on being a security tester. This is one where probably you more like can do like work for maybe like a bank, especially because obviously security is very important for that, or something that deals with very sensitive data, maybe like a government contract, something like that. So a security tester would identify security vulnerabilities and weakness in a piece of software, provide any risk reports. So it would then not actually sort of testing it when new features come through, is to find any vulnerabilities. Again, choosing the best tools to run these reports, creating the test cases similar to a manual and also a automation tester, creating and gathering test data to actually use. So they would then obviously have test data pre-done before any tests are executed. And sort of simple roles for, security roles that could be known as like a hacker, a cracker, or even an ethical hacker. So to give a brief overview on those, a hacker is someone who tried to access a computer system or a network without any form of authorization. A cracker is someone who breaks into a system to steal or even destroy any data. But an ethical hacker performs most of the breaking activities, but with the permission of the owner themselves. So obviously the company will be aware that this is going on, obviously gives sort of some permissions so that they can actually do this. And a non-functional tester. This is where they don't actually test any functionalities of a piece of software. So I'll go into a little bit of detail of examples of what non-functional tests are. So a non-functional tester would create non-functional test cases, execute these non-functional test cases as well. And non-functional tests, these would actually include performance testing, which is an application load time. That should be, for example, say no more than 5 seconds for, say, 1,000 users trying to access a website. So if you've got 1,000 users and it takes 5 seconds, it's this, and the report would then say it's because you've got too many JPEGs, you've got too much JavaScript going on your page, that kind of performance. Load testing is where if you have, say, for example, got 1,000 users, even though the performance is good, can the software itself deal with that many users? So this again, we'll touch on later in QABC about boundary testing. So if you've got 1 user, is it fine? If you go to 1,000, is it fine? But then if you go to 1,001, does it break? And if it breaks at that, then you know it's failed the load testing. Accessibility testing, we'll cover again this further down the line in QABC, which we have done before, which is on our YouTube channel. This is all about, say, for example, web images. So they have alt tags. Is the website, the color contrast okay for people who are visually impaired? The screen readers correct? Is there alt text there for people to listen and read text if they can't see it? And compatibility testing, this is where can you install it on a mobile, or can you install it on a Windows desktop? Is that can you load it and uninstall it? And again, similar to all the rest, they with feedback of any improvements or bugs that they find. So this one, I'd say the best to last. This is for a QA test analyst role. This is where more my role. And so one of the main questions is, and this is something you might see a lot on job specs, is this QA test analyst role. So where in the life cycle do we begin? Here, here, even here, the column to say test, or do we belong in acceptance, or at the end of the line, a complete? So if you go into the chat channel now, you'll see I'll put a link in there for a retro board, which mimics this actual backlog. You should be able to see it on my screen with any luck. If you haven't seen it, I will quickly repost it again. Give me a second. And you can't find the chat box, it should be in there. Nope. chat doesn't want to work. Yeah, there it is. Cool. So in that retro board now, I'll give you a few minutes for everyone just to get that link and get signed on. See, there's 11 people in there already. Because what I would like you to do, and the purpose of this exercise, is in this section here, you'll have a post-it. I just want you to put your initials, or just even a little one-liner where you think a QA test analyst role actually begins within the development life cycle. I'll give you a couple of minutes. You can put your initials, put your name, or just remain anonymous. That is completely up to you. But as long as you put a ticket in there, just saying, I think it starts here or it belongs here. I'll give you 5 minutes. And then once we're done, and then, yeah, we'll crack on. And if you do have any questions or anything, please put them in the chat box, and we'll review these as well towards the end of this half before we then have a break up for a little break. And if you're unsure of anything I've covered, again, please put it into the chat. While the clock is ticking down for people to add their notes onto the retro board. Question for Gabby. I would say it's a good starting point, because with manual testing, it gives you the opportunity to do exploratory testing and regression testing, which is always good to get to know your product before you kind of then go down the line if you want to do then like automation testing or even security testing. Manual testing is a good place to start. But even you've come from going from being a developer to being a QA or a tester, you could then start with automation, which hopefully you may have picked up already how to do that bit of coding and know your website already. Cheers, Gab. Should I send a text? Okay, question from Josh. Backlog is where you would start doing, you sort of, depends if you're working in Kanban or sprint planning, is where you would start discussing work that's come in. So there might be a new feature to a website. So that would be where you would look at scoping out, as well as developers and product owners would start to look at how to start building this new feature or making this new feature. You're welcome. Okay, we'll give everyone 1 more minute and then we'll have a look at the retro board. Okay, I think we've had enough time. Let's have a little look. That is good to see already. That quite a few people put notes into the backlog. Yes, this is exactly where the QA test analyst would begin in the development lifecycle, because it's basically our job to write out the acceptance criteria, or at least test criteria. So we've actually got a better knowledge of what needs to built out, start writing test cases, and the opportunity to get any questions and answered. Yes, for that comment there, aren't QA active throughout the whole Agile Scrum cycle? Yes, this is very true. Obviously, we kind of need to have like a starting point of where that is. So normally this would be, I said, this is just written generically. So you would have backlog or requirements, something like that. Each company have kind of these Kanban board titles written differently. But yes, we would kind of go from start to finish is where that would work out.
Chris, can I just jump in? Sorry.
Indeed, you can.
My video. Just on this, I think for me personally, I've worked in this way for quite a few years now, and backlogs are a really good way to start. However, we're getting more involved in the actual inception of projects and new products coming in. So it's not that we'll only sit in the backlog section. We'll get involved in earlier on, so that we can actually offer our advice and how we can split things up. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're the experts in how things are built, how things are used by people. And we would be the best people to give advice on our experience in the past of how we can build things out in the future as well. So even though, yeah, I agree that agile testers will be, QAs will be very much part of the backlog. Moving forward into the future, I think it's going to be a lot earlier on than that as well, because you know we are the experts. At the end of the day, we know how things get broken down and work.
Exactly.
Sorry to butt in.
No, it's right. I just got an intro. This is Ken Fulton, by the way. He is QA lead at Compatibility and helped me get into testing. It was my mentor as well. So hi, Ken.
Hey guys. Yeah. I think this is great the way you've done it like this as well. So it's nice to see that, Chris.
Sure.
Sorry, I'll go back in my box now.
I was going to say, there we go. So yeah, so the QA test analyst. So as Ken was rightly saying, so we would be collaborating with all the disciplines within the team: product owner, developer. Even I worked with SEO. Or in CRO, it might be known as search engine optimization. People, how and even testing and getting test cases, how even using Google Task Manager. Is it Task Manager? Yeah. How that will work even before that's been deployed. So we would be covering everything. And as before, we'd be creating test cases and even sets of test cases to cover all test conditions, and also including gathering all the test data that we need to support those test cases. We'd also be executing, but then we can even delegate, because the way that tickets should be written, acceptance criteria and test criteria, should be for anybody to pick up, because we've literally brain dumped onto the tickets that all aspects of the work to be done has been covered. And this is including for developers as well. They have to meet this acceptance criteria, demo it to us to make sure that their work is done. And this is not just to catch them out. This is to make them think, if a company's go down the test development driven line, they can start working in the QA way, and it actually makes them better. So it's a good thing. We're not here to catch them out. That's the way that I look at it anyway. I don't know about you, Ken. You're on mute.
I know. Yeah. I think you're right there, Chris. I think you are. Yeah, there is a lot to remember, especially, you know, like if the difference between a manual, what could be a manual test analyst in a company compared to what a test analyst is or a QA is in different companies. I've seen, especially in the past, where a lot of manual testers are automatically just given scripts of what to test against, whereas a QA analyst are in control of what they look into and what they test themselves to make sure they get the right results correctly.
Exactly. And yeah, again, we will report any bugs, retest them once they've been fixed. And also, which people take by surprise, and there's something I think it was Mark about your comments. Yes, we do work throughout the whole life cycle. So yes, we would even go all the way to complete an acceptance and even demonstrate work to stakeholders. Again, we would be working with product owners to get these demos to stakeholders, that to prove that we've met all acceptance, that they're happy with the work that's being done before it even goes live. And if there are any outcomes, the product owner there to sort of, I'd say, shield for any extra work being put in, say like, oh, I want this button actually now to say this, or I want this button now to do that. It's like, right, okay, but we have something of value here for you. So let's get this out, put whatever change you want as a new ticket or put it into the backlog. And let's measure what this is, what we've built for you right now, which we all signed off on. This includes ourselves, the team, and the client or the stakeholder, that we're all happy with it, and get that value sooner rather than later than adding something new and just delaying that value getting out, which I think is a great thing to do, because we're all one of the Agile manifestos is customer collaboration over, I think it's written documentation, something like that. So you work with the client, not just go, right, here's a document, there you go. Stop laughing, you. I'm near enough.
Oh no, I'm surprised you remember it, because I struggle sometimes with it. But yeah, no, you're right with that one. I think Josh picked up on a really good question just before. He's not being massively familiar with development life cycle, and he's still learning it. What is the backlog for? For me, it's you know, I see the backlog as an area of all upcoming work, of what we need to get involved with to make sure before it goes into the to-do column, it's got everyone's aware of it. It's got estimations on it if the team's using estimations. It's got acceptance criteria on there. It's got test criteria on there as well. It's got requirements. It's got user stories. So basically, any size story that you're doing has the correct information that anyone can pick it up. The backlog would be making sure that all that detail at that point is we're talking about it at that point. Once it's all been done in the backlog, that's what's getting picked up next. It moves into to do the next column along. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. This is the critical point where anything in the backlog has been signed off by the team, that they're happy with the requirements that have come in. We've discussed it. We've written acceptance criteria. We've added our test cases in. But before it even comes in to do, we would then get the stakeholder to read at least the acceptance criteria and go, right, this is what we think. This is what you expect. If they say yes, then that's perfect. Then we are all singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were. So when it goes through, we've all agreed to it. If they say no, this is not what I expected, then that's perfect. It's not going into development with so many unknowns. When it comes out the other end and go, this is not what I wanted. We found out before it started working, so they're being worked on, that it's not right. So that's quite key and critical.
I mean, you could always use the backlog to have a stakeholder sign off as well.
Yeah.
Just to say that, you know, like, is this what you want? This is what you've asked us to build. Is this the correct thing that we're building for you? And it's at that point before you go into any type of build to capture, you know, all this work to make sure it's correct, because you don't want to spend like a week building sort of testing sort of to go to them and demo it and they go, that's not what I want.
Exactly.
It's a perfect opportunity to capture that and just say, you've agreed to this, let's build that for you.
And it builds up trust as well with the stakeholders. They can just, so if they say, no, I trust you, but it's like, we prefer if you just had a little look at least. But again, you're building up that relationship, that trust with the stakeholders, rather than going right at the end, they kind of go, oh, this is not what I asked for.
Yeah.
That might be their reaction, I'm just guessing.
I've had it before. It's great.
Is there any more questions? Or if you don't want to put on the channel, I mean, you can come off mute if you like and ask a question. Silence is sometimes golden. I like it. Okay. If there are no more questions, but again, if there's something you're not thinking of now, and you think of in a couple of minutes' time or during the break, please put it into the chat channel, and yeah, we'll catch up with you about it. If we don't get to say it online, we'll put it in the chat channel for you and respond to you. And I shall hand over to Gabby.
Perfect. So, yes, so as Chris said there, if any questions crop up in your mind throughout, pop it in the chat, or even after the event later on this evening, I would say Slack is the perfect place to kind of point those. We're going to do a quick break now. Obviously, we'll keep it pretty brief. We're all at home. We can nip off and do anything at any time, really. We'll take roughly 10 minutes to come back around 1:45, and then Fiona is going to have a little bit of time with you all then. Obviously, if anyone's got any questions in the break as well, feel free to pop yourself off mute.
Catch you all in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Again, if you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat channel and we'll respond for you.
Yeah.
I have to turn my camera off. There we go.
How are you doing, Gabby?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Not too bad.
Good.
Just sort of been really busy. Really, just not much. But yeah, keep myself pretty busy. You've got the next edition of the best-selling testing magazine coming out soon. So
I saw your post. So it's around mentoring, is it? Is that the kind of topic on this time? Yeah. Okay. Fab. I wonder, I might have someone that might be worth reaching out to. Have you reached out to AD Stokes at all? I know he's doing a bit of mentoring at the moment.
Yeah, he'd be good. I could always ask him.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure he'd be open to have a little bit of a chat with you about it. So yeah, he's definitely worth dropping a message maybe on LinkedIn. And yeah, Suman from Sky, I know she's also doing some mentoring at the moment, all through Coders Guild, which I think someone mentioned in the chat that they're part of. So might we'll delve into that.
Who was the other one? Did you say again, please?
Suman, I think it's Suman Bella from Sky. I know she's on LinkedIn as well. What I'll do is I'll message you on LinkedIn. I might be able to link both of their profiles.
That'd be fantastic.
Drop them a connection. I'll do that now.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
No worries at all. But are you keeping nice and busy with work as well?
Yeah, I've just been busy with work. I've just been really busy at the moment. I'm still learning a lot as well, and it's 3 years since I've been there now as well, but it's been hands down the best place I've worked. I've really enjoyed it so far.
Oh, good. Well, I'm very, very glad to hear that. Obviously, 3 years, that is actually crazy how quickly that's flown. But yeah. They seem like a really good company. So I'm glad that you're still, finding it interesting 3 years on. It's
been really good. I mean, when you feel like you're outside your comfort zone, but you're growing at the same time as well. And it's kind of like where I am now as well. It's like, when you feel like there's always challenges and there's always something that's happening, but with the right support in a company where I am now, you can grow and you can sort of like surpass what you think as well. Whereas in a place which is not as nurturing, you wouldn't get that. No, definitely. I think that's a big thing with software testing jobs and jobs in tech in general. Everyone wants to keep learning. When you feel like you're stuck in a rut, that's when people think about moving jobs, isn't it? So learning is a massive part of keeping your employees on side. I mean, I feel like yourself, when you sort of nurtured, and there's something that you can learn from everybody as well. And when you go home as well, and you feel I've made a difference, and you can actually take pride in what you do as well. Yeah, definitely, especially for you and the nature of what your company does. It's actually, really, really important stuff, isn't it? So that must be definitely. It's been fantastic. I mean, I saw one of my old managers at a talk up in Leeds that I did as well. And I think I was actually more nervous about him being there more than anybody else, but he actually said the talk was good as well. So, that's nice to hear. Definitely. Oh, right. I'm just gonna have to quickly, before we start again, just close the door, otherwise the dog will be barking. Bear with me. Oh, but no worries. Oh, bless him.
Gabby, he's super cute.
Oh, he's blessed. He's lovely.
It's a girl.
Girl, she is super cute.
What breed is it?
She's a miniature dachshund. So.
Okay. Oh, lovely.
Yeah, she's still quite energetic. She doesn't really get the concept of, oh, be quiet, I'm on a Zoom call. So. Yeah, dogs are good pets to have. My family have got Staffordshire Bull Terriers. Oh, that's what my mum and dad have. I love them. They're lovely.
I do. Very clever dog, very intelligent dogs as well. Nanny dogs.
They are, and they've got such a bad rep, and it's such a shame because they are actually lovely, lovely dogs.
They are very intelligent as well. I mean, I hate it when people sort of think, oh, it's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, it must be vicious, when most of them are just docile and as daft as anything.
Yeah, they are, definitely. Yeah, I think we've had 3 over the years growing up, so yeah.
Yeah.
But my house at the moment, I know how crazy they can be, and I thought, oh, I'll get somebody a little bit smaller, but she's absolutely bonkers, so it's not necessarily worked out.
How old is she?
She's 6 months just.
6 months just. Ah, shucks.
Yeah.
So she's adorable. I actually just got one 5 months ago too. Hold up.
No, I love animals. I mean, in the
not
past,
quite as miniature, but
oh, bless.
Is this going to be a pet show?
Pet show, yeah, pet show, yeah.
QAs and puppies.
That is so cute.
Yeah, when we were in person, Tracy actually brought her dog a few times, didn't she, to the meetup? Pepper.
Oh, Pepper,
I
yeah.
love it.
It's my pet cactus. He's doing really well.
A little bit prickly, but still. Oh.
Give him a chance.
The only thing I've got is my rowing machine in the background, but I got bored of it. Just put some post-its on to make it look like a face, but I don't know if you can see it properly or not.
Yeah, we can, Chris.
So sometimes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it has it's not very good days. Even rowing machines do.
You need some pink post-its for the mouth rather than them all be green, Chris.
I agree.
I don't know if I draw that red.
I can't see the drawings, you see. We can just see the outline of the green.
Next session, leave that with me.
It's in the
It's a
backlog now.
challenge. Yeah.
To be fair, my treadmill arrived today as well, so I might do like a whole body post-it on that, but it just keeps going round in circles. Full post gym, got a row machine, cross trainer, and a treadmill.
Yeah, that's such a good setup.
Yeah, it does look like the dining room does like a bonsai, but like a gym. It's rather than leaving dumbbells everywhere, people just left gym equipment everywhere. It's ridiculous.
Did you acquire all of this pre or post quarantine?
It's about I had planned, but yeah, all of it's come because of quarantine. Yeah. I do.
I also got a bit of a setup as well.
Do you know what has been a little bit of a godsend? I'll give it that. It's like the one I've got is an office treadmill. So it only does like about, I think, 15 kilometers an hour top speed. But I'm never going to run that quickly. God no. Surprised if I get up to 5.
Working, like, have you ever coded and been on the treadmill at the same time?
Well, you can buy small little treadmills where you can just stand there and walk, and just like the belt's about that long only, and you just sit there doing that. But then you look a bit weird, sat down. Not a thing.
As I was saying, Bobby, the pipeline's looking fantastic.
Yeah, it's like, so like, yeah, you nailed that deployment. It's like you're celebrating. No, I'm doing steps.
People would take you quite as seriously.
They don't take me seriously now, but that's my own fault.
So I think we're just past 10 mins there.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone is back. So we're going to be handing over now to Fiona, our guest speaker. I believe you're at Beyond Trust at the moment. For anyone that doesn't know, they are a excellent company in the Northwest. Is it security?
Cybersecurity.
Excellent. And you have obviously fairly recently joined them, but worked at a wide range of different companies over your career. So lots of but yeah, we'll hand over to you. Obviously, same as last time, if everyone else mutes, and then we'll do questions in the chat box at the end. But thanks, Fiona.
Thank you, Gabby. Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you again, Ken. They're the 3 faces that are people that I know. Others might be others, but I've not looked through it. So yes, a bit of housekeeping on my side. Just so you know, I am in the loft in my office, but I do have 2 teenage children. So who knows if one of them's going to come and disturb me while I'm doing this. I have told them that I'm on a call, but who knows? And I have 4 cats. So I love seeing the dogs, but I have 4 cats. And believe me, they don't listen to a word I say. So you might see one of them walk across the screen or something like that. So I apologise in advance if they do. And that's it for housekeeping, I think. So I was struggling a little bit on what to say here because I'm not sure what the audience wants to hear. So I'm just going to roll with it. And my first thing was to QA or not to QA. So who knows the difference between a test role and a QA role? It's the one. Well, when I very first started, not only did I not know about test, QA wasn't even considered at all. So nobody thought about the idea of what a quality product was particularly. It was purely functional. And I'll be honest, I left school at 16. I didn't go to university. I didn't even do A-levels. I left with reasonable GCSEs, probably could have done a lot better, but they were reasonable GCSEs. And my plan was to go to college to do a hairdressing course. And as you can see, I obviously have brilliant hair. So that's probably why I was thinking that at the time, or not. But as it happened, my auntie worked for the civil service, and she said that there was an office admin job going during the summertime when I was 16. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, why don't I earn some money just during the summertime? And then they offered me a full-time job after a month. So once you get used to having that money in your pocket, you sort of carry on wanting to have that money in your pocket, I guess, especially at the age of 16 as well. So I carried on working with the civil service, and basically I was working for sickness benefits and retirement pension team that was at the time. A lot of things have changed. Bearing in mind, at the time, we didn't even have computers. Everything was paper-based. So while I was working initially, it was all paper-based. I was doing the filing, redirecting calls, etc. So it was an admin role, as is admin roles are today as well, I would have thought. But then I got a promotion and I moved to an office that was only about 7 miles away from where I lived. And I started working on income support. And income support is very similar to, I guess, probably sort of merged into universal credit now, for those who know that. I don't even want to go through how many changes it's been throughout the years, but there's been a few names for it. And I actually really enjoyed it. And at the point that I started doing that, we did have a computer-based system. And I was always the one that used to find a hack around the computer-based system. So there were green screens and you had to press, F5 to get to one screen, F4 to get to another. And it'd be quite a long journey sometimes when you're on the calls. I used to find shortcuts, and these shortcuts used to work. Now, I never realized that actually has helped me an awful lot in my career in testing, because ultimately as a user, I was finding a way to figure out how to use this. And I guarantee you, nobody ever asked me how I was using this or why I was using it the way I was. Then came up a job to be what I now sort of think as a UAT, user acceptance tester, which was up in Lytham St Anne's. I was really nervous. I'd never been really out the area. Like I say, my other job was 7 miles away. So went for this interview, 5 minutes interview, all the way up to Lytham St Anne's, which is about 75 miles away from where I lived, and was asked to do the secondment there. Absolutely loved it. It was I would say it was the highlight of my youth. I was only in my early 20s, had a great time, but also that's when I first started doing testing. Very old-fashioned way of testing. We did work with the developers. It was a COBOL system, and we used to raise our bugs, but we did have business requirement documents, which actually I've worked for other companies where there aren't even requirements documents at all, and you have to sort of try and make things up as they go along. So it was quite good. We worked very closely with technical business analysts, and we used to raise our defects, but our defects were raised similar to what Ken has said, I think, on his talk when he did it. It was handed over to us, and we would have a finite amount of time to test it and to see if this worked. So it was very much waterfall. Business requirements were built, we would read them, we would write our test cases from them, developers would develop, it gets thrown over the wall to us, we'd then raise our defects, they'd then go back to the developers, they'd then come back to us, we'd have to retest it all again. And the projects were, probably 6 months long before anything could get released, if not more. Bearing in mind, it was working for the government as well. Probably still like that today, working for the government in some respects. But it was like that. So that's where my career started. And one of the things that I learned about that is some of the developers didn't like us saying that their code was wrong. And they would try and argue against you. Even, it'd be like, well, it works on my machine. Have you ever heard it works on my machine? Go get them to sit with you and show them how it doesn't work on your machine. That's all I can say, because I've had that experience so many times. But later on, I'll go into more as to how you can help them realize what the difference is between their machine and your machine as well. So that was great. And then after almost just over a year, I was being recalled back to my office to go back to working on income support. I didn't want to go back to working on income support. I didn't want to go back to the daily grind of people screaming and shouting at me because they weren't getting the benefits that they wanted, etc. I'd seen a different life, basically, was the way that I saw it. However, it was really difficult. I'd been working for income support for 8 years at that time. Well, for the civil service for 8 years at that time. And it was very difficult to get a job outside of it. And there weren't that many testing jobs at the time, particularly, unless you came straight out of university, and obviously I hadn't. So I went for a job down in Watford, and initially the job I went for, which I didn't realise at the time, obviously all the way down to Watford, was more hardware. Could I wire up computers? Could I lay cables, etc.? I was like, no, I can just about plug in my TV at home, never mind anything else. So that was a bit of a disaster. Went home a little bit despondent about it, thinking I'm never going to get anything else. I'm going to end up back at the office working on benefits for the rest of my life. However, somebody had heard that I'd gone for this interview, and he actually was looking for a tester, and this was for KPMG. So this is the company I went for the laying of the cables. So they called me and they said, could I go back down for an interview? And it was for, this is how old I am, guys, it was for year 2000 testing. So as you can imagine, it was quite a long time ago. So I went back down and was successful in the interview. So I started a job at KPMG. And I was testing KPMG internal systems, but also their devices. Somebody had, this is, again, I don't think probably nobody on this has ever used it, but there was a Scion, which was a handheld device that you could use. Look it up, PSION, I think it is. And so I tested that. But what I did was I went to speak to the business people who were using it, asked them how they used it, what they did with it, never realizing that all of this is a process of how you actually understand how to test. So I was almost a business analyst as well as a tester, but none of these roles were defined at the time when I was doing it. So that job was going really, really well. Unfortunately, due to personal circumstances, I needed to move back up north. And I did. I got a job with NatWest. It's still year 2000 Y2K testing. And I started working on their internal systems doing Y2K testing. Really good, thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, not particularly technical, all around the UAT side of things, really, more than anything else. Finding out how people were using the systems and then testing them to make sure that they would still work when we rolled over to the year 2000. And I did find some issues, to be fair, there were. So, I mean, obviously the world didn't explode like some people thought it was going to, but some systems would have failed on the rollover to year 2000. Then I was lucky enough to know somebody who worked for IBM, and I found out there was a job available for IBM. And I thought, wow, IBM, obviously the hub of anything to do with IT, etc., brilliant. So I got a job with IBM, initially working, they were, as most people know, IBM are quite, even though they have their own systems and were quite big in the obviously the hardware world, in the laptop world, etc. They were also consultants. So I was a consultant for NTL at the time. So I was working on NTL systems. Again, thoroughly enjoyed it. Still more sort of UAT side of things. And they wanted me to go and work in Hursley and Southampton. So quite far away from Manchester. I just got married and I was like, don't really want to go all the way down there and work down there 5 days a week and not see obviously my husband at the time at all. So I decided to look for another job. And I did get another job. And that was with a shipping company called Ulysses. And I was a lead tester in that role. First time I'd ever been anything that was known as lead. We used to, the product that we had, I learned all sorts. I learned how to ghost machines. I learned how to start using databases. There was so much I didn't know at all. I'd never been exposed to that I could be exposed to. Worked very closely with developers. We were all in one office. There was a London office and a Manchester office, and we all worked together. And we all worked harmoniously together. So that was brilliant. Thoroughly enjoyed that, learned so much. Actually did a bit of line management as well at the time. First time line managing somebody else in a similar role. Unfortunately, our circumstances had it, the company decided they were closing their Manchester office. So I was like, right, so I'm looking for a job again for a reason or another. And one of my friends who I worked with previously at the original testing role at the government, she actually was permanent there. So she said, well, we're looking for contractors to come and work on a new benefits system that we've built. And I was like, brilliant, I'll go contracting then. So I did. So I went contracting there, had a good run of it for a while. It was, again, it was contracting to IBM, bizarrely enough. And because I'd worked previously on the green screens, I was known as the person who could work on the green screens, who could operate them, who could communicate them, etc. So I had that bit of a niche on other people who were just going in as contractors who were doing their UAT work. So that was interesting. Got pregnant, happily got pregnant. So left contracting. After my son was 6 months old, I thought, right, okay, I need to look for another job. I don't really want to be contracting and look after a child, etc. So I got a testing role for a software house, and this was based in Manchester, and it was a petrol pricing company. Web-based, but also I learned a lot about, it was a C+ system, and I had learned an awful lot about DLLs. I learned even more about databases, SQL, and how to read and write SQL. The developers were very good at sitting with me, walking through things. And again, really enjoyed that role, and then got pregnant again a couple of years later. Wasn't that well? It was quite quicker than I expected, but no, it wasn't even a year later, 18 months later. And then I was like, I couldn't see myself going any further with this company, particularly. I had a line manager who was the senior QA person there. I didn't feel as if there was anywhere to go. So I looked for another job, and I got a job with a company called Lex Leasing. And that actually probably was the one that really boosted my confidence, because I went in there and I was working with UAT people who had never used SQL, who didn't understand how things were developed particularly or anything like that, who weren't confident on questioning things. Whereas I was, because I've been through a few roles previously and had some experience. So my confidence grew from there. Had a really good time there. The company was taken over by HBOS and it was taken over by Lloyd's. Dynamics were changing, and I was like, not really enjoying this. So again, a few years later, decided to look for another role. My husband at the time was working for Auto Trader, and he said they were looking for testers and contract testers. So I went, okay, I'll go back contracting. I'll see if I can get a job there. I did. It was, the interview was quite good. It was the first interview that I'd ever had where I was actually tested technically, not overly technically by any means, but I was asked to, I was given a schema of a database and then some questions on how I'd write the SQL to get the information out. And then there were a few other web-based questions. So it was the first time I'd ever had a technical interview, as well as a, do you think you can do this job? Looking back now, because I was going in as a contractor, it generally was the right thing to do. If I was going to interview somebody now as a contractor, it'd be like, yeah, okay, I hope your personality fits, but can you do the job? Basically, is what a lot of people are looking for as contractors, because you are there to fill an interim period the majority of the time. I ended up being with Auto Trader for over 2 years, and I did go permanent with them because they offered me a line management role. And I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the line management, realised how much I enjoyed line management as well, still being hands-on. Carried on doing that role for a few years. And then Auto Trader was their senior tech people board got changed, took over, and roles were changing completely. And I wasn't really on board with how the roles were changing, which is fine. You don't have to be on board with everything that happens with the company you're working for. So one of my friends that I did work with at Lex originally, she was working at Swinton Insurance, and Swinton Insurance were doing a huge transformation program. And she asked me if I wanted to go contracting there. And I was like, okay, I'll go back contracting then again. And I was with Swinton Insurance for quite a long time, doing the transformation program. Probably technically one of the best jobs I was in. I was involved in quite a lot of what happened within Swinton Insurance and their transformation. I was quite well respected for my knowledge of databases. I was able to, look at the logs. We use like Kibana to look at logs, which is really important. One of the really important things that we need to remember is QA. That's the difference between QA and a tester. Tester will go, okay, I know it needs to work functionally like this. As a QA, you'll think, okay, how about I look around the box? It might look like it's working perfectly fine on the screen, but there could be a lot of errors happening behind. Let's go check the logs and see what's happening there. And I was doing things like that. I also used, I'd used JMeter previously, but in Auto Trader. So I was known as somebody who could use JMeter. So I could start helping drive the performance. I helped drive the disaster recovery. So there was a lot of things that I realized how much I could do. And it's that sort of confidence as you build, you go from role to role. You don't realize that you actually know a lot of stuff that can help. And even I would say that I am not technical. Any job I go for, I say I'm not technical. But then when I get into the job and somebody says, oh, have you used such and such? I'm like, oh yeah, I can work with that. Oh yeah, I can interrogate APIs. I know how to look at a website and see any errors that are coming up and figure out where those errors are and link it up with the API call and check if the data's right in the database, etc. And it took me a while to realize that, to get that confidence on things. And after a while, I was asked to, if I wanted, I'd say headhunted, but I don't know whether it's headhunted or not really. I was asked to work at Money Supermarkets in North Wales. Really enjoyed Money Supermarkets. Again, I went from going in as testing QA, and I did delivery lead role there. Very good. Learned new technology, Mongo databases. Started working with Mongo databases. Skip a few roles forward. I went back to Money Supermarket to work in their Manchester office on their mobile devices. I hadn't worked that much on mobile devices. A lot of experience then, having to work with it, using different technologies to interrogate mobile devices and to interrogate the calls to them, etc. I also then left Money Supermarkets, still as a contractor, and I went to work for a medical device company. I worked with some developers who I previously worked with, and it was again a very good role. This is where I learned more about regulations, rules and regulations. So we also need to remember, not only is it technology we need to understand the rules and regulations around the system that you're working on, because that can have a huge impact on how you test it and what the quality is of it. Because it could be that you could have a website that works perfectly fine, but there could be one tiny thing on there that breaks the whole rules and regulations, and that would be useless to the people that need to use it. So we need to have all of that in mind. And on to today. So again, you can look at my LinkedIn profile and see that I've skipped a few roles here, because otherwise I could go on forever about the different roles that I've worked in. However, today, as Gabby said, I'm working for a cybersecurity company. I'm working for their Windows product. Never worked on Windows before as a whole. It's brand new to me, and it's really interesting, but very frustrating as well. it's because it's a cybersecurity application. What we do is we have a system where we give it to the company and they install it, and it means that we can stop people elevating programs and doing things that they're not allowed to do on their machines. Could be a call center, could be somebody like me working in IT itself. Fantastic. And what the frustrations that we have are compatibility testing. So we don't know what other programs people are going to use against our application that we put on there. Very similar to how you don't know whether somebody's going to be using Chrome if you're working on a web, or IE, Edge, etc. Very much like working on mobile devices. How many mobile devices are there out there? I mean, there are hundreds. And even a chip in a mobile device, you could have 3 mobile devices exactly the same way, but if there's 6 months between them, a chip inside it can affect how your application might work on there. So there's a lot of things to think about overall. I think my main point over all of this is that I've worked for quite a few years, and I've moved jobs for personal reasons, for career reasons. And I think that's okay. I think what I've took with me from job to job has been very, very good. What I've learned from job to job has been really good. And we need to understand that QA is very different from being a tester. Yes, you can be a tester, and you can do what is said on the tin, and that's not a problem. But QA is not that. QA is quality across the board, and similar to how Chris was demonstrating earlier with the backlog, it's the beginning, the inception of a product is where you want to be in as a QA. You want to understand why it's being built. If you don't know the why, I don't think you can do the test. You can understand the end result either. So always ask questions, always try and understand the reasons for a product being built in order to be able to get that final product that the customer really wants. And that's me done, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, that was great. So if anyone has got any questions, if we can pop them into the chat box. I have got a couple, if that's all right.
Of course.
You've kind of mentioned a lot of your roles there, and you did kind of make a little bit of a reference to which ones you particularly liked. But if you had to pick the #1 role, and obviously you might feel obliged to stay where you are at the moment, but what would you say it is?
I think it is difficult. So I wouldn't say this is my #1 role by any means, Gabby, because I've been here since July, and I keep saying I'm new, and I'm not allowed to now because people have started after me. So I'm not allowed to say I'm new anymore in that role. I think this is demanding. I think that the role I actually enjoyed the best was probably the very, very first one that got me into testing.
Yeah.
Because it was the first to move away from home or my surrounding areas. I got to meet new people, my confidence grew. And it was the one that put me on the step ladder, I guess, to where I am now. So I think I think I enjoyed that role, wholly enjoyed that role more.
Excellent, definitely. And we've got a couple of questions coming in, and we'll flip to them. The other thing I was going to ask you is, now obviously from a hiring manager point of view, as a QA manager, what would you like to see if you were approached by someone who wanted to break into testing? What kind of things would you be wanting to see on their CV, or what kind of attitude would you look for?
Very much similar to what I said earlier at the beginning, where when I was working on our green screen monitors, and I was finding shortcuts, it's that type of thing. It's like, well, what have you done that makes you think, what can I do different to what's happening here? Because that's what, as a tester, that's what we do. Not trying to break it, but think, how would somebody use it? Not even, always be thinking as a user, how am I going to use this application? Oh, I know there's the UAT roles, there's system testing roles. You'll find these different names for the types of roles, but it doesn't matter whether you're in as a system tester. You can also go, well, if I press this button here, what happens? So there's that sort of a little bit, the exploratory side of things. Always explore what you're given as well, and that will help you question things and get things right up front as well as your experience grows.
Yeah, just to back up what Fiona just said then, is about, it's not really our job to break things.
No.
it's hard, as I've said to the company I'm now with, is it's my job to prevent anything breaking or any bugs. That's what my role is. That's why the whole point of that retro board before is that's why we are in the backlog. That's why we're there for when tickets get written out, when work comes in, to start asking those questions straight away that the people probably 99% of the time wouldn't think about because they're not using from.
We're not button pushers, are we? We don't sit there and just get a script given to us and just said, just test this. You know, we want to look into everything, how it works, how it looks, you know, and I think, you know, even compatibility testing as well, you know, like people need to know the difference from testing a mobile device over a web device, a web application, you know, because, you know, you press buttons on it. You know, how does that work when you're developing a responsive app? You know, you need to understand this type of stuff as well. So yeah, there's so much from a manual button pusher to, you know, what we do right now. You know, our role moving forward, especially my role, is more on the split between QA BA role, because I need to understand how everything works inside and out to give the best that I can do.
I spoke to Chris briefly about this last night, and a while back they were sort of phasing out testers and going, oh, you can have your developer testers because we can automate everything, and there was that type of thing that was like not long ago. That was about a year ago. I know. Let me finish, Ken. Don't get stressed. Let me finish. But that's the way that they were working. Was it like a dev in test type roles that they were trying to sort of bring in, which isn't a bad thing by any means. However, they're sort of now, a lot of companies I'm finding there aren't necessarily BA roles as such. You've got more product owners and product managers who sit sort of with the QAs, and I think in between there's that BA, and you both do it. I think QA is across the board, so I think that's what's happening more. So you have to think more about, analyze more about why we're doing something, even question the product owner as to why they want to bring this in. Is it more value over something else that we could be working on, you know? And I think that's perfectly fine to do that.
Even you know, what Chris went back to before about, you know, writing your user stories. The way you write your user stories is that anyone can pick them up, and that means as a team, as a PM, a QA, BA, whoever you work with, if you can write the correct story, anyone can pick that up. That means, you know, as a QA, you don't have to be the sole tester on the team. And I think that's great. That's what we want to do, the route we want to go down. It's like, you know, we're giving people the best tools to use, that they, you know, we shift to the left, we shift to the very start to go, we're building out these stories, you know, and further down the line, you know, it might not be us that test it, it might be the product owner, the PM, the BA, it might be developers that get involved in that, because as you've probably seen it before, Fee, we are the bottleneck when it comes to too much work going through.
Yes.
By sharing that load and getting the stories in the right position, you know, we can move through really quickly and get other people working that way.
Exactly. It's also lightening the load as well. Say something we had on Agile Talk today is eliminating deadlines, which I do agree with. Is again the way that things can be written. If they're, unfortunately, some clients, customers, partners, what you want to call them, unfortunately do have deadlines, they will always still kind of be a thing. If there is an easy ticket to pick up, or there's that many, that can be again sort of distributed out to everybody. So obviously we'll probably take the more QA heavy ones, test heavy ones to deal with, and give, like, you know, is there a button change? Yeah, a product owner can just do that. Or if a developer done a bit of work, make sure that they hand over to at least another dev. They don't test their own stuff. Yeah.
Not only that, Chris, as well, have a say in how the stories are going to be done. So if you're doing the start of a sprint and you've got a 3, a 5, and an 8, say for example, make sure that somebody's working on the 3 and they're not working on the 8, because they're thinking, oh, I need to get the 8 done. Well, that's brilliant. You need to get the 8 done, but if you do the 3 first, it will keep me busy while you're then working on the 8 afterwards as well. So and that should be a collaborative conversation that you have.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's part of QA.
Exactly. And is that 3, the first bit of value you can actually get out to the customer?
Yes.
Yeah, I also see it as the way that, you know, we're not before us as manual testers, you know, the button push type of ones, we are separate from the conversations that happen. Now we are the drivers of the conversations to make sure we are building out the correct things and we're doing the correct best practices, Chris.
Best practice, not processes.
Not processes. We're building out the best practices, and we're driving quite a lot of that stuff. And Chris, you've seen it before, how in code we got completely ingrained in making sure that we are at the forefront of everything. You know, if we're missed out from meetings, how can they define something without the test effort going into that as well?
Exactly.
Definitely, I love it. I love it when we go off on a bit.
So I'll mute myself. Great talk, Fee, by the way. Great talk.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, no, excellent talk. And we've got a few more questions to go through. So Andy would like to know, what has been your biggest challenge to date in testing, and what did you learn from it?
Okay, so my biggest challenge, I think my biggest challenge was when I worked for the medical device company. I hadn't worked in an arena where I was responsible for making sure that, so in the medical device world, there's CE markings, and if you don't have those CE markings, as in you get a big audit around what you do, then there's no point in having that device out there. So there's different CE markings based on what you are. So if you're a pacemaker, you know, and you're in somebody's heart, then you could kill somebody if you don't work properly. So there's obviously those regulations around that, but it doesn't matter what. So we were working on studies and providing systems for studies that people could do. So it still had to be it was a lower CE marking, but it still had to be a CE marking, and it was understanding all the regulations around that, because there was nobody to give me that information as such, or to tell me what to do, because I was initially the first QA there, and leading the QA side with the developers, very like most startup companies, very dev heavy rather than QA heavy, let's put it that way. I'm very responsible for delivery, understanding delivery, being able to audit everything, knowing where the documents had to be. We had to have paper documents, so that was probably my most challenging role.
Excellent. And Dean would like to know, so if you started all over again in test, or if you had your time again maybe, what would be something that you would focus on learning potentially earlier in your career? What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
I guess that's difficult to answer, because I've had quite a good journey of learning, because I started before testing was a real thing as such, or it only just really come into force. I've been there since the very beginning, and I've watched it all evolve. So I think so in some companies, whenever as a contractor, I've gone into companies to drive the QA as well, which I've been really lucky to being able to do that. And that's what I like doing. So I think you need to have confidence as a QA, have confidence to ask the questions. That's what, I mean, I've always asked questions, and I've never had a problem sounding silly. That doesn't bother me whatsoever. Because maybe 1 out of my 10 questions, one of them might make somebody think twice about something. And to me, that's fine. You know, it doesn't matter that it's only 1 out of the 10 questions. That's better than, that's better than not having asked that question in the first place. So I think making sure that you ask questions, and if you don't understand something, make sure that somebody explains it to you in a way that you want it explained to you. So if a developer is going to talk technically to you completely, and it just doesn't sink in because you don't know technically how that works, tell them to stop and go and ask somebody else who can give you an answer that makes you understand. Because if you don't understand what you're testing, you're not going to make a good tester.
Exactly.
That is it. Simple as.
And it's like when people start to ask questions, they always begin their sense of, oh, this might be a stupid question. It's like, no one.
Good question is a stupid question.
That's what they say, although I've seen the faces of some developers when I've asked them questions and their eyes roll. Oh God, it's her again. But I'm just like, oh.
No, it's so important when you're at the early part of your career to never let, especially your pride or your ego, get in the way. Ask for help when you need it. That's the only way you're ever going to kind of progress forward.
And always reiterate back how you think things. So somebody might explain something to you, then reiterate it back to them in your words, and make sure that they go, yes, that's what I mean. because communication is absolutely key. Absolutely key, communication.
100%. I think we've got another one, kind of another question along the same ilk there. So Morgan has asked, when you start a new role, how long do you think it kind of takes for you to start adding value in that role?
So I have a 2-week rule. I have a 2-week rule where I go to meetings and I listen. And then after those, and people don't know me. So a new role, if I have not worked with somebody who's in that, even when I've worked with people, they're like, God, you're really quiet, Fiona, it's not like you. And I'm like, it's my 2-week rule. I sit there for 2 weeks and I'm quiet. And then after those 2 weeks, and I watch everything that's going on. I listen to everything that's going on. I try and engage people's personalities, because that's really important as well, because somebody might respond better to you speaking to them a certain way than somebody else does. Very, again, communication, understanding how communication works. So I give myself 2 weeks and then I just let loose, basically.
No, I feel it's right. Yeah, it's like when I started at Music Papa, we were given like a 2 weeks of buffer periods, like again, to learn the website, get to know your product. And again, it's like get to know people as well, who's doing what, then rather than just kind of jumping straight into the deep. And again, you go in straight into testing. Again, if you don't know what it is you're testing, you won't do it properly.
No, and if you're savvy about it, you'll be able to see who are the helpers, because some people are more helpful than others. That's just the nature of the work that we do. And you'll also see who are the leaders. So you'll see who you need to influence and who can help you with what you need to learn as well, if you give yourself a slight buffer when you first.
That's what I was going to bring up then as well. It's like, you know, I tend to do that to understand who are the more dominant people. And you can see the ones that are going to have the biggest pushback straight away, you know, the loudest voice, even though it may be completely incorrect what they're saying or completely, you know, out there. You get to gauge that straight away and just say, all right, you've got to tread carefully with a certain person. Yes. I've gone into that trap before, you know, where yeah, and it's not nice, and trying to get them on side is a struggle. It really is. But I think going in there and just, you know, observing people and see how they interact with people, it's great to see that as well.
Yeah, and I think roughly around 2 weeks is a good thing. Nobody's necessarily expecting you to walk into a job and be able to do it immediately like that.
Yeah. So
I think that's roughly a good time. Over a month, then you're probably going to be sitting there going, is this the right job for me? That's all I would say, basically.
No, definitely. Fabulous. Well, I think that was all of the questions in the chat box, but obviously if anyone has anything else to ask and they want to unmute themselves or any other questions in chat, so we'll have a little look before we wrap up. Give it a moment.
I'll jump in right there. So one of the concerns I had sort of when exploring the role of a QA or a tester as a career path for myself was sort of the squeeze of thanklessness in the sense that it just I imagined a scenario where you'd be having to sort of hold back production to, I suppose, go through a barrage of tests or use cases and make sure you're thoroughly satisfied with the standards and practices that you've become accustomed to. So you holding off production in that sense, or you allow it to go through and something breaks and it's sort of on you. Sort of in your experience, how have you sort of dealt with that double-edged sword where you from what I understand, or just common sense, exhaustive testing is just not possible. So something's gonna break invariably. How do you manage a situation where you're not satisfied with a release, but business is sort of diving down your throat to a build or something like that? If
it's something that you've missed that nobody thought of, I wouldn't beat yourself up about it. More say it's like, I think it's like the core philosophy is like with like feedback, stuff like that, accept it as a gift. It's like, right, okay, I'm now going to learn from this. What can we do next to make sure that never happens again? Okay. But again, we're going to the agile, like being an agile QA, that blame culture's got to go. It's more about acceptance across the whole team. Again, this is why everyone's involved at the very beginning, getting sign-offs that everybody's happy. So you're not going down that blame culture. They are looking at you going, yeah, it's your fault. It's like, well, hang on a second. That's not on. Like, this is what the devs didn't think about. It's something I didn't think about. The accountability is on the whole team. Again, and again, the business should have a quick rollback in place. There is another term for it. I can't think of the top of my head. It's like something that happens. What's the rollback?
The blue-green releases and things like that is ideally is what you want, but not every company has that, to be fair. But
again,
so my apologies, I didn't preface my question. So if you find yourself in an institution where, so Fifi mentioned earlier where you were driving the sort of the QA culture and you're the first QA there. So you're finding yourself in an environment where the whole premise of testing is not really ingrained in the culture, and it's still, they still aspire to find themselves in a situation where it's script it all out and we'll deal with it automatically, essentially.
I think ultimately, to me, when I've been in that situation where it's been, right, it's a tester's fault, because that was the way that the world was when I very, very first started testing, to be fair, it was. Humility is a really good thing to have. So I know we say there's accountability, etc. There's responsibility and accountability that are two things that are very key in the agile sort of arena. But when I very first started, it was actually testers are responsible for getting the product working. So even though the developers were the ones that wrote it, testers are responsible for making sure that it worked accordingly. And it's just like, right, okay, but they're the ones that developed it. They're the ones that wrote the code. I mean, are we supposed to check on them? Which is what we were doing. We were checking what they were doing, but it's humility as well. It's sitting there going, do you know what? You're right. I didn't catch that. And making sure, and then saying, so next time it goes out, I guarantee you I will be testing that thing and exactly around that. And I will make sure that I question that when the code comes to me or something around that arena. So it's that, so the humility and the learning around it. I'm always learning. Still now, even after 20 odd years, I'm always learning, especially because it's different products that I've worked on, but I'm always learning about myself in my role, and I'm always learning about people that I work with and what we can do better. But humility is key, definitely key.
The computer says no.
So just follow on that as well, from my experience, you know, what you were just saying before about how you would not be a gatekeeper to that, you know, just making sure that you get your point across that something's not good to go out, something's not ready to be released. I always tend to use risk-based. So it's one of those ones. It's just like, okay, I believe that this can't go out, and the risks of this. Let's just say you work for a website that makes purchases. You know, someone spends money on their website. If you release this, X amount of people cannot log into their site to make purchases to be able to do that. Use a risk base to it, to just say, if you release this and it breaks, your investment in this is gonna drop so much. It's how you talk to them as well. You can't just say, this is broke, don't release it. You've got to say, well, you can release it, but no one's going to be able to buy anything. If no one can buy anything, you've got zero profits coming in. If you've got zero profits coming in, you know, we're not going to get paid. You know, it's one of those, it's how you handle that as well.
I would seriously hope we didn't release a product like that though, Ken, to be honest, if it was that blatant.
In my past, I've seen it before, where it's just like, you know, we've said, this is not fit for purpose. We can't release this. And they've just gone, it needs to go out today. You know, marketing purposes, we've heard that before.
Yeah.
You know, or we've spent £1 million on TV advertisements, and it's gone out and it's bombed straight away on that day. And it's like, we told you it's not fit for purpose. But having that risk in there to say, these are the risks you're going to have if you do this, it gives you a lot more say so how things can go out. But that's just one thing to remember, just about risks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind actually, to find sort of a common thread to be able to communicate a risk-based approach. Okay. Fantastic, thank you.
No, you're welcome, buddy. Cool. And I think we are pretty much bang on time.
Well, I think Chris just wants to have a quick wrap up and obviously make sure that everyone knows about all the different ways that we can kind of carry on the conversation between events as well.
Yeah. So as you can probably see on my screen, we are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We do have, unfortunately, I've not put a slide up yet, but I have put a note onto the chat. We are on Slack. So if you email us at qabcmcr@gmail.com, I will send you, or any of us will send out an invite to you, and we'll get you joined in. We have a community. I think we're nearly hitting 70 on Slack now. So yeah, there's a wider experience. And again, if you are new to testing or looking for a testing job, there is a jobs channel in there as well. And Gabby, Beth, and me are always putting jobs on there. So yeah, I definitely advise to come and join our Slack channel. So that's it from me.
Fabulous. Well, I think that is absolutely everything. So thank you everyone for joining this evening. It's been a really great event, and obviously we've had some good conversations. So hopefully everyone's found it useful, and we'll have a bit of a debrief and maybe just look at the next event lined up and post it out to you as soon as we can. But hope everyone has a lovely evening.
No, thank you very much. Thank you, Fiona, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thank you. Bye.
Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah, I don't think Debbie's gone. I would say, Ken, Fiona, if you want to stay on.
Can do, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, guys, wish me luck next week. I've got an interview on Monday.
Good luck.
Nice.
Good luck, my friend.